My name is Mark Perlmutter. I'm a civil trial lawyer in Texas. I've been licensed since 1974. I've tried lawsuits for the last 30-odd years, and recently in the last 8 years I began teaching a course called Trial Masters at the University of Texas Law School, which I'm thoroughly delighted about. And in the last 3 years I've started teaching a course called Managing Human Differences in the undergraduate honors program at the University of Texas. Both courses actually have a whole lot to do not only with teaching really powerful persuasion skills, but also teaching negotiation skills and really humanizing the process for the students, both the undergraduate and the law students. There's a lot of community building in the class and creating of really positive learning environment. Probably 14 or 15 years ago, I wrote a book called Why Lawyers and the Rest of Us Lie and Engage in Other Repugnant Behavior. That was prompted by a deep frustration I was having with all the useless and unproductive conflict that I saw going on in the legal system. I got frustrated by having to deal with people who just didn't seem to have either a mindset or the skills to negotiate problems effectively, and in a way that was that just made common sense. People would unnecessarily engage in lying and other repugnant behavior when they thought that was really helpful to their case, and when in fact it turned out it really wasn't. I'm seeing in my law school classes, which are really pretty much a little incubator or petri dish or experimental lab, however you want to say it. I'm noticing what tactics seem to work and what tactics don't, and they invariably tell me and each other that when other law students get on their high horse and get overly aggressive, that all that does is stiffen resistance rather than result in concessions or going anywhere. One of the most effective negotiators I've had in one of my classes 2 years ago scored a far better result for the defense without getting obnoxious or aggressive at all. He was very insistent, very persuasive about the points he was making, but didn't do anything to cause other people to stiffen their resistance. He simply made his case in a way that they could hear it and help them recognize that he felt that he was right and had good reasons for expressing that. And he was much better at convincing other people than anybody else in the class by far. His settlement amount was less than 40% of the next best result I'd ever seen in that class, just by virtue of his being able to be persuasive without being overly aggressive. I've really found that there's a place for love in law school, and there's a place for love in my undergraduate class as well. What I've really found is that kids are yearning for it, and they're really alienated by what goes on in the ordinary classroom. Now, I'm not saying that all ordinary classrooms are this way, but certainly in law school, with the emphasis on analytical education and adversarialism, law students are really trained to lose their emotions. And what I do by the time I get them in their second, third year is try to reacquaint them with their own humanity. Because if they're going to go in front of juries, they're going to have to understand that. Because it doesn't really work real well to simply stay in your analytical brain when you're dealing with people who are making decisions based on not only their analytical brains, but their emotional brains as well. And it's really important to pay attention to both aspects of that decision-making process. So, the class really makes them a lot more effective. but at the same time it really humanizes them. It makes them recognize the importance of really getting in touch with what the way people, not only the way people feel about things, but the way people, think about things, but the way people feel about things as well. Yeah, it's sort of interesting. There was a piece on the news recently that I heard where President Obama was getting ready to pick a Supreme Court justice, and he wanted someone who had empathy. And you heard a lot of lawyer types say, well, we don't want empathy, we want total rationality, we want a decision based on the law. Well, the problem is that the law is interpreted by people, and people, whether they're conscious of it or not, are making legal decisions and seeing the law a certain way based on their own emotional outlooks. Now, there's not any question that empathy can, undue empathy for a particular party can result in giving that party perhaps more of what that party wants than would be fair for the aggregate. If you looked at that decision across a number of different cases in similar contexts, you would have to say that, well, it's really not fair to give every person who is in this position this result. And if you conclude that the only reason that's happening is because of empathy, then empathy's being is weighing too heavily in the decision-making process. On the other hand, totally cut it out, which is what a lot of people suggest, and that's the sort of traditional rationalist view, which I think has largely been discredited, although there are some people who still hang on to it. But if you were to totally cut it out, then you get the results that the lawyers reached in Vichy France, when they simply looked at the law rationally and happily aided the Nazis in sending Jews to the gas chamber in France. There was no empathy there, no humanity there. There was just a cold look rationally at the law. I recently read an experiment in which really shows just how significant empathy can be in a person's decision making, and how rationalist decision making invariably leads to greater cheating. There was, in this experiment, half the subjects were told to make decisions based on rational analytical processes, that's the best way to make decisions. The other half of the students were told to make decisions based on their gut feel of what was right, based on their intuition. And interestingly, a number of these students had at least 2 economics courses. And the students who had at least 2 economics courses were far more likely to cheat, regardless of what the instruction was, than the students who had not had economics courses. And the experimenter concluded that the reason for that is that in economics courses, people are told that rational self-interest is king, and people are supposed to do everything they can to maximize their economic viability. Whereas from non-economic students, what was a really powerful result in this study was the fact that 46% of the people who were told to make decisions rationally lied to their own financial advantage, and only 14% of those who were told to make the decisions based on their intuitive gut feelings about what they should do cheated. So more than 3 times the number cheated who were making decisions totally rationally, which speaks volumes. It says that any time that we teach legal ethics, any time that we teach business ethics, any time that we teach any kind of ethics, what keeps people honest more than anything is essentially that sort of intuitive gut feeling that they've had since their upbringing that tells them the difference between right and wrong.